I mean, it's interesting, each of those three institutions has a very substantial professional education division, right? And a lot of this work happens within the realm of continuing and professional education. A lot of this market responsive programming to build skills and capabilities in the talent pipeline. But each of these institutions that I look at closely also has relevant activities in other areas, in the Career Center, in the Computer Science Department, in terms of how it designs programs. So you see this activity dispersed across the institution. They do admittedly have some pretty substantial resources, at least these three schools that I look at, to point at those problems. So for institutions that are less well-resourced, what do they do? There are really three things that I recommend most schools consider doing. The first is to do an audit of those work readiness programs that you have on campus. Virtually every school of any size is already investing in a number of ways in orientation programs, in first-year experience programs, in academic advising, in career centers, in alumni relations groups. But do they tie those activities together? Can students find a straight through line so that they can move from one set of activities to the other and see how they have a multiplier effect? Or is it more like students, pinballing around, hitting a few of the bumpers and then sort of going down the hole and not progressing any further? So the first is to look at what the assets are that you already have in place and to begin to think about connecting those in some meaningful way. Secondly, I would look at where there might be gaps along that value chain and to say, well, are there activities, services that we should be providing that we aren't? And then thirdly, you have to ask yourself the question, can we fill those gaps by building that capacity ourselves? Or should we look at partnering with third parties to address some of those gaps? There have been billions of dollars of venture capital going into education technology companies in just the past few years. There's also this very interesting subsegment of that market called employment tech. Just within the career services space, there are 50 to 75 early stage companies that are either trying to supplement what traditional colleges are doing or are trying to supplant what they're doing. So you want to look at the assets that you have, you want to assess the gaps that you have, and then you want to figure out how best to fill those gaps, whether by building internal capacity or by working with some of these third parties who are doing some very interesting things.